Can you see the screen as well?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Prof, is it okay for us to start now?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
If
So,
everybody is ready.
Yeah, okay. So, a very good afternoon to everyone. Welcome back to the last session of the day. So the next session will be the topic of handling pathological specimen and basic staining techniques, general principle of immunochemistry. So we'll be by our lecturer, Associate Professor Dr. Muhammad Shazihan Muhammad Saleh from University Science Malaysia. So Associate Prof is a senior lecturer, DU 54 in University Science Malaysia. He received his MBBS from Adeline in the 1995 and obtained his Master of Patho from USM in 2005. His current academic responsibility is teaching pathology for undergrads as well as postgraduate professional medical training and also supervising master and PhD students. His subspecialty training is in the cytopathology with research interest in molecular pathology, gastrointestinal and soft tissue tumor pathology. Let's welcome Associate Prof. Dr. Muhammad Shazihan Muhammad Saleh.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chairperson. Thank you for the generous introduction. Yeah, you are very true when it comes to senior, and I'm at the moment, I'm the most senior full employed pathologist in USM. Okay, okay, thank you for having me. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So the afternoon, I'm going to give a brief overview on specimen handling, staining in histopath and the frozen section. Basically, it is quite a big topic to cover in 1 hour. Usually, I have 1 hour to present on frozen section alone. So, but no worries. I try to make things as simple as possible. Again, to have pathology lecture in the afternoon is a disaster. Okay, as I think as you learn from during your graduate time, apart from taking a strong anything that can knock you down, one of the best thing is to open your pathology books lah, especially at night or in the afternoon. Okay, so I would like to share the first 4 important slides, which basically summarize pathology in a nutshell. So I found this very helpful, especially for those who are very afraid of pathology. You know, so first, when you have a question, yeah, and when you have a specimen or whatever pertaining to pathology, first you need to know is you need to identify the organ. Okay, if you can identify the organ, that's the first step, successful first step. Okay, and then provided you don't interchange between the one who's supposed to be on top of your head, then those who should be over the knee. Yeah, some people get interchanged. The organ should be in the head, but they put in their kneecap. Okay, so you have to analyze whether the organ is actually normal or abnormal. Yeah. Okay, normal or abnormal. Of course, if normal, that's it. But of course, during exam, we're not going to give you a normal organs. Okay. Once abnormal, we have to decide whether is it a non-neoplastic process or is it a neoplastic process, based on features that if you get, let's say you get slides, you have to decide whether it's a non-neoplastic or neoplastic. So of course you have to see the features. Okay, if you think it is a non-neoplastic, based on the evidence that you have to decide whether it is inflammatory cases or otherwise. Okay, it could be developmental error or developmental problems that occur in that organ. Okay, if it is inflammation, okay, by evidence that you found, you have to decide whether this is acute or chronic inflammation. Okay, again, okay, every time there's a bifurcation here, there must be a reason. There must be a defining criteria to separate between these two events. Like acute inflammation, you get to see the difference between acute and chronic based on the cells that you could see under the microscope. So if acute, you can decide what is the etiologic agents, whether it's a bacterial, fungal, virus, parasite, and whatnot. Okay, if it is chronic, you have to decide whether it is non-granulomatous or granulomatous lesion. Basically, by finding whether there's a formation of granuloma or not. If you think there's a granuloma, you have to decide whether it is a non-caseating or caseating. So the reason why I put up this so-called diagram so that it's easy. This is what happening in us pathologists during when we looking at our slide, the thought process. I think the same thing should happen to you so that it will help you in the decision making. Okay, if you go back, if you think what you see is abnormal and you think it's a neoplastic, again, you have to decide whether it's a benign or malignant. Okay, based on the features, you should know what separate between benign and malignant. Okay, if you think it's benign, you straight to find what is the origin of the tissue, whether it's probably probably is a glial tissue or probably adipose tissue, muscle tissue, like for example benign, and if it is a adipose tissue is a lipoma. Okay, again, if you think it's a malignant based on features that you could see, malignant features, actually the cellular morphology, you have to decide whether this is a sarcoma or carcinoma. Sarcoma basically is a mesenchymal in origin. Okay, basically the soft tissue. Whereas if it's a epithelial in origin, it would be a carcinoma. So if you think it's sarcoma, and then you have to do you have to decide. You have to look for the histogenesis. So this is where our topic today, stain, would help to differentiate between all these events. Okay, so if you think it's a carcinoma, epithelial origin, you have to decide whether it is gland forming, which is we call adeno, or a non-gland forming, which is a non-adeno. So non-adeno can be your squamous cell carcinoma, urothelial carcinoma, and adeno is adeno. Okay, so this is where when we talk what I'm gonna touch a bit on the staining. Okay, so the second slide, again, this is basically the more detail of what I said before. When there's a neoplastic, you have to decide benign or malignant. So histogenesis, when it's benign, you have to decide on histogenesis. This is where our immunohistochemical staining would help. So whether they are positive for blood vessel antigen, if they are positive for bone and whatnot. Okay, if malignant, you have to decide again sarcoma versus carcinoma. We have a special immunohistochemical staining which we can separate them whether they are positive for sarcoma antigen or they are positive for epithelial antigen. Again, once we decide, we can pinpoint their origin. Okay, again, when we get to see a malignant lesion, okay, usually I would always tell my student, my pathology student, to start with the here we start with the H&E staining, and then the next step is to do the special staining. Okay, don't worry, I will go in detail what does all this staining means. Okay, and once we have decided reticulin is a special stain. Okay, if it's helpful, we can decide whether this is carcinoma or sarcoma, but most of the time it's quite difficult stain to interpret. So we ended up doing more specific staining, which is the immunohistochemical staining. Okay, all these H&E, special stain, and immunohisto, they have different principles. So you need to know the principle. It can easily come out in your exam. Okay, again, this is more towards the immunohistochemical staining. If you have a malignant lesions, This is the staining. Vimentin is for the sarcoma, and cytokeratin or epithelial membrane antigen is for the epithelial. So if these two, if vimentin is positive, we know is a sarcomatous lesion. So we do very specific staining. We stain for GFAP. If it is positive, it is a neuron in origin. We stain for myogenin. If it's positive, it's a muscle in origin. If we stain the cells are positive for melanin A, we know is a melanoma cells. Again, for adenocarcinoma, again, we have very specific immunohistochemical staining to differentiate between the thyroid, the prostate, or for the breast. Apart from the immunohisto is also to identify the hormonal markers on the tumor, so that what treatment can we give. Okay, again, if you see a tumor, you have to decide. Other pathway is to go through the degree of differentiation. Yeah, it could be well differentiated, moderately differentiated, poorly differentiated. This criteria basically depends on how well the tumor cell resembles its original cells. Okay, for example, if we talk about squamous cell carcinoma, the well differentiated one, okay, it always follow the normal skin epidermis, whereby you can see the keratin layers. Okay, but when you couldn't see any keratin layers, but you can still differentiate, you can still see the keratin, but instead of in layers, they are inside the individual cell. That's when we know that this is a moderately differentiated. Of course, the poorly differentiated, we know they are squamous in origin, but there's no evidence showing that they have a keratin formation. So my advice is, if you have time, have a quick look, try to digest that 4 slides. I used to have it before, but somehow I don't know where I put it, but that 4 slides, I made it fresh for you all. So hopefully it will help, especially when you're trying to answer exam questions. Okay, back to the main topic for today is specimen handling in histopathology lab. Okay, this is the specimen that, thank you to my colleague and your lecturer, Mr. Faisal. So he introduced me to your donut in the Bukit Sekilau. So that's just take you away from the first 4 intense 4 slides. Okay, basically all specimens removed during surgery must be submitted to surgical pathology for gross and microscopic examination. Basically, reasons being, there is a reason why you do the operation, and there must be a reason why you send it to us, because you want to know whether your clinical diagnosis is supported, with the findings, microscopic findings. Okay, even though 90% of diagnosis can be made by your clinical history and examination alone. So the rest 5-10% is basically all the ancillary tests. So this includes major surgery performed within the hospital, ambulatory surgery or satellite surgical suites, and minor surgeries performed in outpatient clinics or hospitals. So you need to send the specimen to the lab, wherever you are. Okay. Wait, I just need to. Okay. All specimen must be placed in a leak-proof container, because the specimen that we are dealing with has to be treated as a biologically hazard materials. Okay, it should be transported to the lab immediately after collection, if possible. Okay, some of the specimen you need to be sent to the lab immediately, because you need to do certain tests or investigation. If not, okay, it has to be kept somewhere. If you need to send it fresh, if you're going to send it that day, it has to be refrigerated, because when you take off the specimen, once you stop the blood supply, the autolysis will occur immediately. When autolysis occur, all the cellular structure and features will be gone. So if not, you have to put the specimen in a fixative. What fixative to be used? Usually in the routine HPE lab, what we use is this commercialized commercialized 10% formalin liquid. Yeah, I think you can find it everywhere in the OT, especially in the OT. Usually is a 10%. Okay, remember, it has to be a good ratio between your specimen and the formalin. Okay, even though here I put I took from the internet. They want at least 50 to 20 times of the volume of the specimen, but the ideal is about 10 times. So if your specimen is about 1 cubic centimeter, so there's about 10 mils, about 1 mil. So you need 10 times of the volume of the formalin. Okay, and for you to know, the rate of the formalin is a fixative, so that the fixative, basically the aim is to fix the specimen. It will stop the autolysis from occurring. It will maintain the cellular structure and features. Okay, in a normal room temperature, the rate of infusion of the formalin into tissue is about 1 centimeter per hour. So if your specimen is big, it's going to take a longer time to get the specimen fixed. Okay, but the best thing, if you're not sure, if you have some other specimen than the routine one, you call up your lab and ask what kind of fixative that you need for your specimen. Sometimes you just need to send fresh without any fixative. If you put your specimen in fixative, we cannot do the test which need to be done if we need a fresh specimen. Okay, one important thing that for all of you to know, to take note, is that since almost all the labs in Malaysia, we are almost all of the labs get accredited by external body. Okay, and once you get your lab is accredited, we have a very strict quality to be followed by everybody. And pre-analytical part of this is the form. Okay, make sure that you fill in the form appropriately. Okay, you don't want that your specimen to be rejected. We have every right to reject your specimen if the form is not fully filled, where the vital informations which are needed to be on, which is not there. Okay, so make sure, take time to fill in the form properly. Okay, for us pathologists, the most important thing is the clinical history. Okay, clinical history, clinical examination. Tell us what you think so that we can help you. Actually, I think nowadays the request form a bit better than last time, but basically it depends who fill in the form lah. Most of the time is the houseman. Okay, you know, sometimes the information are just short and too sweet, too short and not so sweet lah. Okay, and I hate to see a form. The reason for requesting the HPE is to rule out malignancy. Okay, and yet there's no clinical information given. So that's why once I presented during my masters, I presented in the CPC. Basically, my reply is, if you give us rubbish, we'll throw away we throw back the rubbish to you lah. Okay, even though it sounds harsh, but yeah, you know, same. If you depends on the quality of specimen. Okay, be proud of your clinical skills. Give us a good specimen. If you don't know where to take the specimen, like say a huge mass. Okay, you would like to take biopsy. Okay, my advice is don't take the center of the lesion. Most of the time, the center of the lesion are the necrotic area. Okay, you can always get some supervision from your radiological colleague lah. Okay, probably they can give you some information where is the best area to take the specimen. Yeah, and always if you have query, call the lab. Okay, you can always ask. You can always talk to the MO, or you can even talk to the on-call pathologists who are quite happy to help you actually. Yeah. Okay, and label the specimen appropriately. Make sure the identification on the form and on the specimen is correct, because we check all those. If it is not tally, we have to reject your request, which is it's going to take you have to come down and track everything, so it takes time for the result to be produced. Okay, I think thanks to Mr. Faisal, he gave me this UIA form. I think most of the time, most of the hospital now, all the request form online. Yeah, same as in USM, all other request form now are online, and our report are also paperless nowadays. Everything is online. So fill in. Especially my advice is try to fill in. Where is the summary? Yeah. Fill in as many information as possible. Okay. We are quite happy in USM with the orthopedic. With the orthopedic surgeons, they usually what happened, we used to get very minimal information here, but the orthopedic colleague of mine make sure that some of the orthopedic surgeon in training do posting with us. So once they've been to our place, the request form most of the times are very detailed, and yeah, we are quite happy. So fill in. Yeah, basically this is the way of good communication. The best outcome from a clinician and pathologist interaction, the best outcome is achieved when there's a good communication. Okay, some of the specimen muscle biopsies, yeah, you have to make a special arrangement, because special muscle biopsy, we need the specimen fresh. You need to know how to send it. Okay, you have to send it fresh. Just wrap it in a saline mustard gauze. You don't have to do anything else. Make sure make an appointment, call them first, so that the lab will be ready. Because it need to be processed as immediately as possible. Okay, don't try to tie the muscles onto anything. Just the best is just call the lab and ask what is needed. Usually they will help you. Okay, the specimens. What kind of specimen do we get? Anything. Yeah, we get from head to toe. This is from courtesy of our orthopedic colleague. Yeah, so we get the whole leg. Yeah. Okay. When actually, I had to take this specimen to my mortuary, my forensic unit, because it's just too big and I cannot process it in our usual biohazard field boot. It's just too big. I had to process it in my mortuary. Okay, that's when we carried out. Yeah, it's a very necrotic tumor. Okay, it's a huge tumor. So this is an osteosarcoma. Oh, this is a different specimen. This is my specimen, a private specimen. So this is another specimen that I get from Kontan. I forgot what's the shop, but I'm gonna have another visit once this COVID PKP out of the way. Yeah, this is a very good specimen. So this is your lecturer, my best friend, Mr. Faizal. Okay, this is a soft tissue tumor. Label it if you think it's gonna help us. You know, you tag them, and whatever you tag, put you write in the request form so that we can follow. Okay, sometimes we don't know which part of the margins that you are more interested in. Okay, of course, for us as a pathologist, we will always take all the for like this. We always have the 2 lateral or 4 laterals and 1 deep margins. Okay, unless when we cut open, we see some other part where the tumor is very close to other margins, we will take that. Just label them, but don't, once you label them, write in the form so that we can follow you. Okay, this is the same tumor when I cut it. Okay, so I know with the reference of the suture. Okay, is the label. I can orientate the specimen so that the most important thing is when it comes to the margin. Okay, I can label the margins. I painted the margins. Okay, so that easier for me to know which part, which margin I'm dealing with, so that you can get accurate information how far a tumor is from the margins. You can do anything with the specimen, but my advice is please don't cut open. Don't cut open, even though I know you are very you people are very curious. You want to know what's inside. If you cannot cope with your curiosity, as if you don't cut it open, your day won't be complete. Okay, you can just come down to the lab. Okay, just come down to the lab if you want to see it. We can cut it for you there in the lab so that you can see. Okay, sometimes what happened when you cut it, we lost the true orientation of the specimen. Okay, this is what we end up with. Those specimen I ended up is getting some of the representative blocks, tissue, which I need to analyze under the microscope. Generally, the rule is depends on the size of the specimen. So the general rule is 1 centimeter, 1 block. But it depends. That is the general rule. But if let's say the tumor is about 10 times 10 centimeter, is huge. So if it looks similar, when I cut open, it looks similar. So probably I just take less than 10. Okay, this is my cat. Okay, so this is another specimen. I think with our nephro urologist, it would be very helpful if you can label the specimen for us. Sometimes it's very difficult to orientate between the upper pole and lower pole because we have to depend on the hilum here. We have to look for the renal vein, renal artery, and the ureter. So sometimes it's a bit difficult. If you can label it for us, since you get to see them, probably you get to probably where the veins, where the arteries are, and where are the ureter. You label them so that we can easily follow. Because actually we need to examine the ureter and the renal vein, because the renal cell carcinoma, they can propagate through along the vein as well as the collecting system. Okay. This is what happens when we cut open. This is a typical features of renal cell carcinoma. Is a yellowish or grey tan color. Okay, yeah, 90% is one of the poles. Okay, so if you get the specimen, the exams, okay, what you have to do is again, you identify the organ. So is a kidney. Okay, is it not normal? Okay, there's a lesion. Okay, so basically we are dealing with the neoplastic process. Okay, grossly you have to describe what organ, is it normal or abnormal, the size, the dimension, and then when you see the lesion, first you have to describe the size. Okay, if possible 3-dimensional. Okay, and then you have to comment on the color, the cut surface, whether there's a when you describe the pathology specimen, always put the word gray in front. Okay, gray, if it thing is a whitish, put a gray whitish or gray yellowish, gray brownish. Because if you say white means white like the paper lah, is white. But actually our not many of our tissue are pure white. Okay, so on the cut section, whether you can see is it a solid, is it a cystic, mix of cystic or solid, whether there's a necrosis or whether there's an area of hemorrhage. So yeah, easily you can get you can actually get full marks if you mention all those. Okay, again, this is the colon specimen. Again, sometimes the surgeon very they have itchy hands. The colorectal surgeons, they have very itchy hands to cut open and see. Okay, if possible, don't, because it's not going to help you anyway. Because the tumor, is already there because we have taken the biopsy. So let us describe for you. If you wanted to know how it looks like, just come down to the lab and we can show you. Okay, there's the ulcerating fungating tumor in the colon. Label them, proximal, distal. So things are a bit easier, because what happened if you don't know the orientation? Yeah, we have to call you to come down and assist us. And sometimes when you come down, you can't even remember, where things are. So unless you open the operation notes to refer back. Okay, so this is we ended up with the specimens here. This is from that colon, and then the lymph nodes and whatnot. Okay, again, this is another cat. Okay, this is the breast. Okay, I think the breast surgeons, they have their own labeling. So at least, even though don't assume that everybody knows, even though majority of people knows, but just label them, and mention it in the form so that we know. This is a mastectomy specimen. Okay, I think that's about HPE part of a specimen. HPE specimen. So apart from the tissue, okay, we also dealing with the so with the tissue, we call it the histopathological examination, HPE. But we also have this other component which is a cytopathology. Cytopathology basically look at the cells, whereby the cells basically they are not from a solid organs. Basically, they are in liquid. They are in spaces, in liquids, or we take them by force, whereby they are not in their original state. For example, that's what happened when we aspirate a lesion. So basically, to evaluate exfoliative or aspirated cells for abnormalities, including but not limited to the presence of cancer, precancerous condition, infection due to fungus, virus, parasite, or bacteria. So we have fine needle aspiration. Basically, the purpose is to obtain diagnostic cells from a designated site without using open biopsy techniques. Okay. So depends where you are. This is very comprehensive forms when it comes to cytology. I think this must be from the private lab. Okay. Okay. Some of you are probably familiar. Yeah, this is the gun. We call it a gun. Okay, we make the pass through the lesions. For example, this one is thyroid, and then we make a smear. Okay, and then we stain them. Okay, we make a smear. We make a smear, and then we stain them, and then we see. Okay, under the microscope. Okay, this is what we could see in the aspiration from the thyroid. This is basically a benign. How do we know it's benign? Because the cells look monomorphic. There's not much of there's not much different in terms of size. Okay, this is what the malignant form looks like. So this is under the H&E. This is the papillary thyroid carcinoma. Okay, you can see the cellular features in the smears. It's a bit difficult when it comes to follicular thyroid CA, because follicular thyroid CA by definition is defined by the presence of capsular or vascular invasion, which you cannot see in the aspiration. So, but we can have some information from the smears. Basically, these are all microfollicles. Okay, suggestive that we are dealing with follicular neoplasms. So basically, we ended up saying follicular neoplasm because we cannot say whether this is follicular adenoma or follicular carcinoma, right? Because we cannot diagnose follicular carcinoma from aspiration. We need to remove the thyroid. Okay, this is from the breast. This is typical benign looking of the breast aspiration. Monolayered sheath, monomorphic, typical classical antlerless horn. So this under the this is what they looks like in the solid tissue lah. So it just, for me, I found it is a bit more difficult to interpret the cytology, because you take the cells out of their 3D arrangement. So everything is a bit haywire. So I found it very difficult in the beginning of my training, but later on with experience, we have to imagine this to put them in this picture. Okay, so that we know that it is a benign. Okay, this is what malignant looks like. This is the under H&E. It's easy to diagnose under H&E actually. Yeah, based the loss of glands architecture. This is the breast, but here you can separate pleomorphic, very pleomorphic nucleus. This is so huge. This is small. You have intermediate. So whereas this is a benign one. So that's the breast. This is lymph nodes smears. This is benign because you can see mixed population of cells. Lymph nodes basically lots of lymphoid cells lah. But we can see tingible body macrophages. This is a clue whether we are dealing with benign or malignant lymph nodes. The presence of tingible body macrophages, basically they are part of the antigen presenting cells. We know that the glands are benign. The lymph node is benign. Okay, so here this is the metastatic squamous carcinoma. This shouldn't be. Okay, be at the wrong place in the wrong time. We know this is not a normal cellular, a normal inhabitants of a normal lymph nodes. It has to come from somewhere. But with the cells have very orangeophilic, very orange cytoplasm, very big hyperchromatic, very dark nucleus, very pleomorphic. We know this is a different from other organs, and they are in clusters. So it is a metastatic carcinoma. So this is another aspiration from the lymph nodes. Okay, even though all are lymphoid cells, they are round, they look not so much of nuclear pleomorphism, but okay, in order for a lymph node to be a normal, you have you have to see multi-population of lymphoid cells. You can see lymphoblasts, you can see mature lymphocytes, you can see tangible body macrophages. Here, what you can see is all are monomorphic, one group of cells. They are about intermediate size. So when we talk about size of the cells, ladies and gentlemen, we are not making things up. So for you to know when we say large or small, basically our reference is the endothelial cells. Okay, the endothelial cells, basically they are around about endothelial cells, they are about 20 microns. So we refer to them. If they are larger than the endothelial cells, we label the cells as large. If it is smaller, then the lymphocyte, then the red blood cell, we call it small. In between, we call it the intermediate size. So we have our own criteria how to call the cells big or small. Okay, we have other specimens that we receive are the Guinea smears. Okay, this is so what happened in ONG clinic or in other clinic when they do the pap smear. Okay, this is the routine pap smear. This is the conventional pap smear whereby last time they just take what they call pap smear test. They just strike the spatula on the glass slides and make the smear and then we stain. But now we are using more of this thin prep. Basically, thin prep, we process the specimen first. Okay, we remove all the bloods, and then only then we put them on the slides. That's why they come in so-called very round, typical shape. Okay, this is how it looks like, the pap smear. Okay, this is in HPV, this in herpes, HHV. Okay, yeah, this is also HPV. Okay, and the non-gynae specimen that you send to us all this fluid, the breast secretions, the corneal, especially if the clinicians want to establish some fungal infection, ascitic fluid, pleural or pericardial fluid, okay, from the GI tract, okay, from the respiratory tract, sputum, for example, the bronchial washing or bronchial brushing, CSF, we frequently get the cyst fluid, any cyst that the clinicians try to remove, from the urinary tract, the urine, okay, and also from wound or lesion scrapes. Okay, this is CSF. Okay, normally this is what the normal constituents. Okay, this is all abnormal cells in the fluid. Okay, in the pleural fluid, this is reactive. This is the reactive mesothelial cells. Okay, these are the malignant cells that we can see in if they are present. They are present in the fluid. This is from the ovarian cancers. This is adenocarcinoma. Okay, adenocarcinoma. We can say that this is abnormal cells, malignant cells, and probably since they are arranged in 3D clusters, we think is a adenocarcinoma, but we can, since it's a metastatic lesion, we cannot specify. So based on this, if this is the only clue that you have to look for the primary. Okay, this is pleural fluid. Again, this is reactive. You can see the lymphocytes and lots of lymphocytes and lots of reactive mesothelial cells. Okay, these are the malignant cells. You can see in the pleural fluid. Okay, so staining. Okay, staining in H&E, basically, you've seen that from the specimen, I took a few representative samples that I need to examine. So what happened without the staining? the section that we get is colorless. You know, you need something to highlight the cells. The very first staining that ever discovered in histopath is the HNE. Yeah, is the hematoxylin and eosin. So we simplify with the HNE. So basically HNE, this is the color, the blue and the pink. It depends on your color perception. So basically, even though it's very worthy here, basically the concept of hematoxylin and eosin, the underlying principle is the acid and base. Okay, so basically the dye is composed of hematoxylin and eosin. Yeah, if it's a basic dye, hematoxylin is a basic dye that stains the acidic components of the cell. For example, the nucleus. Okay, whereas eosin, the acidic dye that stains the basic component of the cell, which is the cytoplasm. So basically, it's an acid and base kind of reaction. Remember that. So yeah, basically when you talk about acid base, basically it got to do with the charge H plus and yeah, basically H plus. Okay, so yeah, if you can see that, basically this is H&E section. Okay, there's a lot of empty spaces. Okay, empty spaces, it doesn't mean empty. Initially, actually they contain substance. So during the processing, some of the substance get dissolved because the tissue are submerged into formalin and xylene. Okay, the fat content most of the time they can be dissolved. Basically, this actually is not an empty spaces per se. It contains something before it got processed. Okay, basically you can see the two colors, the blue and the pink. Okay. Okay, this is what we get to see under the microscope. This is you can see the nucleus. Basically, the nucleus contains the DNA. So they take the bluish color, whereas the cytoplasm take on the eosin part, the reddish part. Okay, you can appreciate the nuclear features. Again, same as this. Okay, this is I can say that this is from your bowel. Okay, this is the muscle layer, spindle cells, and these actually are the ganglion cells. So this is the ganglion plexus in your muscularis propria. Okay, again, these are what you get to see under the HNE. And yeah, this is a true picture. Sometimes you get to see a weird picture. Okay, again, the mind believes what the eye see. So I suppose these cells, it has an ambition to derive from Mercedes. So that's why he formed that tri-star, the star-shaped nucleus. Well, this guy is a more futuristic. So he decided to take the shape of this so-called imperial starship. Okay, this is even more Gothic type of cells. Okay, when you see our report, you probably have read about this abnormal mitosis. So this is what we meant by abnormal mitosis. These are abnormal mitosis. Normal mitosis, you don't have this kind of nucleic arrangement. Okay, we finished with the HNE. Now we go to the special stain. So basically, the special stain is in addition to the stain that we use in HNE. Apart from the HNE, stains apart from the HNE. Now basically, HNE can only tell us about the nuclear and the cytoplasm of the cell. This cannot give us or inclusion if there is any. It cannot give us anything more than that. Okay, so for special stain, basically, if H&E, the basic principle is acid base. Okay, for special stain, it based on the chemical reaction. I think you remember when we were in our primary or secondary school. I think almost all have done this Benedict solution test to look for the presence of glycogen. So whereby you put I can't remember what's the initial color, and then you heat it up, there will be a change of color. I forgot what's the color. Blue and brown. I don't know which one changed to which. So basically, that's what the chemical reaction that occurs between the dyes and the component of the tissue lah. Okay. But also under so-called this term special stain, we have other very specific staining lah. But in HPE, when we talk about special stain, is that stain lah, which use the chemical reaction as a principle, is a basic principle mechanism. Yeah. So here we get to see more color apart from your blue and pink. So depends on the content of the cells. We depend on the dye, we get certain colors. For this one, okay, the epidermis, or this is the trichrome, meson trichrome. Basically, it stain for the connective tissue. Okay, in this case, the connective tissue. This is the epidermis. Your skin. This is the dermis. Subepidermis. So basically, our subepidermis, there's a lot of connective tissue. So what happened that meson trichrome, we stain the connective tissue. Here is actually better. It should be a bit light green to light blue. So it highlights the soft tissue. So this is very this stain is very helpful if we look if you want to look what happened in the kidney. In a chronic insult to the kidney, there will be loss of tubules. The tubule will be replaced by connective tissue. So we do the stain. We look some of the areas where should be the tubule should be is replaced by the connective tissue. Okay, this is another example of special stain whereby we use GMS silver stain. So I can't remember what it is. It's basically a silver-based stain. So it is very good to pick up fungal. Fungal, the silver component of the stain will stain black of the fungal component. Same as this. This is probably Cryptococcus, and this is probably Aspergillus. Also, sorry, this is Pneumocystis carinii. Okay, PAS basically it stands for the glycogen, okay, and which is is a component of the basal membrane, and this is very helpful in the renal because this is your glomeruli. Okay, basically it should have a very thin, very minimal basement membrane, very thin basement membrane. So if there is an insult, there will be sometimes a bit technique of the basement membrane which we can appreciate. Okay, another stain that you are familiar from your undergrad is the Ziehl-Neelsen. I think I'm not sure whether I think during my student years I managed to do this Ziehl-Neelsen. Of course lah, during my first year NAPATH training. During my microbiology, we have to perform this test lah. So basically, it's an acid fast to pick up the acid fast bacilli. So this is all the cells which are being inside of the macrophages. Okay, again, this is fast. This is again in renal. Okay, you can see very nice. This is a normal basement membrane. Okay, then the mucin come in. This is where we use this stain to differentiate between the adeno gland-forming tumor and the non-gland-forming tumor. The presence of mucin indicate that the glands, actually the cells are mucin producing, so they are actually adenocarcinoma. It depends on the degree of differentiation. Okay, if it's well differentiated, where you can see the lumen, you can see the mucin in the lumen. If not, this is more of moderately differentiated because the mucin are inside the cytoplasm rather than a lumen. So that's how we know. But you know this is adeno based on the mucin positivity. Okay, this is for Asian blue pass ataupun or PAS Asian blue. This is stain we use usually in the gastric biopsy to look for the Barrett esophagus, whereby there's a intestinal metaplasia process which occur due to the H. pylori. So another stain is the immunohistochemical staining. Okay, again, the principle of the immunohistostaining is different than the previous two. Let me recap. The H&E is an acid base. Special stain basically is a chemical reaction. Immunohisto is a more specific. Basically, the basic principle is the antigen antibody complex. You know, antigen antibody complex is a very specific interaction, so it's become more specific. Okay, for example, you have a tumor. Okay, you don't know. Let's say you don't know. Let's say you get a tumor in a lymph nodes. Okay, so you one of the stain you want to know whether this could come from the prostate. Okay, so the tumor cell, if it comes from prostate, it will have this prostatic specific antigen on the surface. Okay, so what we do, we get the slides. We put the primary antibody. Primary antibody basically is the antibody against the PSA. Okay, if PSA is there, it will bind. Okay, so now you have already established one binding. So what happened next? We apply a secondary antibody for this antibody. This antibody, most of the time we have the enzymes or we have a chromogen attached to it. So this one, the secondary antibody, will identify this primary antibody and bind it. So basically, it's an indirect method. So and then we get to see if the interaction is positive, you can see the stain. So we know that now that this metastatic tumor is actually from the prostate. That's how we tell. So basically, this is what happened on the slides. We have the slides, we have the tumor there, we have the tissue. Okay, and then we have to retrieve the antigen. Usually we use the heat, and then we add the primary antibody. Okay, we add the primary antibody, depends on what you want to look for. Okay, and then we add the secondary antibody. Okay, and then the color will develop, which we will see under the microscope. Okay, this is how. Okay, this is the example of that PSA. So this is a normal control. So normal control, even though this is a prostate tissue, but we don't add the primary antibody. Okay, since there is no primary antibody, the second antibody won't bind. Okay, like this one. Okay, this is a prostate gland, prostate tissue. You put the primary antibody for PSA. Okay, and then we put the secondary, which have the color, and you get to see color. And usually this is the typical color, this brownish color. Because we use this so-called DAB substrate. Again, this is cytokeratin, which is this is the skin, this is the negative control. Okay, so basically these cells are epithelial in origin. So we know this is, if this is this tumor, we know this is a carcinoma. Okay, it depends on the substrate you use. Okay, chromogen you use. This is a horseradish peroxidase, so it stains a bit more of a magenta color. So this stain pick up the neural tissue. So this is the neural tissue, is positive. Okay, this is vimentin for the sarcoma, mesenchyma. You can see this is the epithelial cells. Okay, this is the mesenchymal part. So the stain only pick up the mesenchymal component of the tissue. Okay, that's how we know whether let's say this is the tumor cell, if it's stain positive, we know that they are actually mesenchymal origin. Same. This is the colon. When we do vimentin, it only stains the mesenchymal, all those tissue structures arise from the mesenchymal components. For example, the blood vessels, the lymph vessels, all the lymphoid cells, but the mucosa itself is actually negative. So it's very specific. So this is the lymphoid cells, and this time we don't use the DAB, we use the Horseradius peroxidase. It's still magenta, but this is more expensive. I think this color, so that's why this is more reliable. It's more long last, so we use this DAB lah. Okay, another staining method that we used to have in our lab is the electron microscope to look for the ultrastructure. Basically, the principle is we use the photon beam lah. We have to stain. We use a heavy metal iron to stain, and then we stain the tissue, and then we put the tissue under this photon light. Okay, so this is you get to see the extra structure of the cells. This is the plasma cells. You can see plasma cells. The function is to produce antibody. So these are all the Golgi complexes. These are the mitochondria. So this is a very famous image in the pathology textbook. I think you've seen that, Burback granules, which is typified in the HCl. What is HCl stands for? It's Histiocytosis. Okay, another staining which is very more specific. This is the fish. Fluorescent in situ hybridization. This is part of the molecular stain. It's very specific. So basically, it is at the molecular level. We stain the DNA, the chromosomes. So it is very specific and it's very expensive. Okay, and this is how it looks like. So we use this in breast cancer. Okay, whereby we look whether the HER2 is amplified or not. Okay, in this case, you get to see them. They are not the normal ones. They are not amplified. They have 2 copies, per cells. Okay, but here, some of the tumor cells already have multiple copies. So since based on this, the tumor is positive HER2. So this patient is good candidate for Herceptin investigation treatment. Okay, I think we come to the last part of the lecture. It's already 5 o'clock. I try to make this fast. This is very important. Okay, this is the one, the most important, because not because of the you get to directly contact with us, but because of the patient management. Okay, perhaps if you have free time, you can find this journal, this article written by my teacher. Okay, actually he was a teacher and also a colleague. He already retired. Okay, this was published in 2006. It's very reliable, easy to read, easy to understand. My advice, get it and read it, because basically my lecture is a summary of his article. So basically, it's an intraoperative consultation. Okay, for us pathologists, once you request forensic section, we started to have sleepless night actually. It's not easy. It's not easy for us because there's a lot of reason. Okay, therefore that's why, okay, in USM we need you to tell us 3 days earlier. Why? Because we need to read around the case. Okay, we need to know what investigation has been done before, so that what the blood test, whether the biopsy done before, if there is any radiological investigation done, what was the findings. We need to know all that, because it will help us when looking at the slides. It's not easy because compared to the routine H&E, which is fixed using formalin, the tissue are nicely fixed. and we get to see every structures, architecture in detail. But in frozen, different, because we use other means to fix the tissue lah. In this case, we use the water to harden the tissue so that we can cut. Okay, basically indication is to provide a diagnosis that will allow the surgeon, you all, to make an intraoperative decision regarding further surgeries. So I think our turnaround time is 1 hour. In an uncomplicated case, we are expected to give the results within 1 hour. Okay, 1 hour from the specimen arrive to our lab. Okay, basically to avoid subsequent surgical procedure, if possible, to make primary diagnosis when pre-op diagnosis is not available. Okay, to assess margin, this is some of the indication. Make sure you know the margins, because usually if I answer the phone and you ask for frozen section, I will always ask the indication. Okay, if you cannot answer my question, I'm not going to entertain your request. Okay, if you can answer, it depends whether your answer is correct or not. Okay, to assess the margins, of course, you in the very tight space area, especially the head and neck, you have not many room to spare. You need to know whether the margins are free. Okay, adequacy of diagnostic material, because sometimes you have done so many biopsies at the same at that tumor, but you cannot get the diagnostic material. That's when frozen section is very helpful. Okay, this is not so much in our setting, but probably in the Western, yes. Okay, some of the illegitimate reasons. Just because you are curious, it doesn't mean that we will entertain. So I would probably say, no, I'm not going to entertain. Okay, preliminary report to the family in the recovery room. Specimen is for primary diagnosis and it represents the entire available sample of the lesion. What's the point? Okay. When the entire sample appears uniform and grossly benign. Okay, if you think it's benign, don't ask, unless okay there is some part which is a area you think there's a necrosis and you think there is an infiltrative. Give a reason why you think is not 100% benign. Yeah, we will entertain you and try to avoid any infective lesion. Okay, the pathologist actually we need the cryostat, which I show you. We need in advance the brief history of the patient, clinical diagnosis, surgical findings, and we need to know what you want to know. I think in frozen section, communication between you and us is very, very important. Call us, let us know. Okay, make yourself easily contactable because sometimes we need to ask some more questions. Okay, historical setting, we only able to do this frozen section once we get the idea, we find a way how to harden the tissue so that we can cut. Okay, so we use the water, basically. We freeze the tissue by freezing the water so that the water will hold the tissue so that we can cut. And of course, the invention of this machine, which is the cryostat, basically, this is a tissue section with freezer. Okay, this is -70 degrees. Okay, so we quick freeze the specimen, and then we cut it in this so-called very cold area so that we can process it. Okay, again, this is the concept of the frozen section as I told you before. Basically, the same thing. Okay, it's a rapid technique compared to the paraffin embedded paraffin section. Okay, it's not a replacement for the more established routine technique, but it will help in the intraoperative decision. Okay, again, frozen section should not be treated as an emergency. I think last month, it kind of pissed me off because the neurosurgeon requests frozen section, but somehow the patient is put on emergency OT list. What the hell? I said, okay, because when you tell us, when you book a frozen section, I cannot go anywhere, my MO cannot go anywhere, and even the technologists, they cannot go anywhere. We have to stand by because we don't know when you're going to send the specimen. You know, we don't like to be treated that way because we have our own other works to do. Yeah, while for you, you only have that patient to attend to. Okay, so if only I know that the cases was booked under emergency list, I would definitely reject. But again, depends on who the surgeons lah. If you know, I think you know Dato' Jafri. If Dato' Jafri was the surgeons, it's very difficult to refuse lah. So yeah, but don't have some thought about us. We have we have some other things to do. Probably we're not physically active, moving as you all, but we use our mind a lot more than you are. Okay. Again, this is some of the application of frozen section. To determine the adequacy of margin. Okay, determine the organ of origin. Establish the grade of the lesion. And this is very true for the neuro lah. They want to know whether this is a high grade or low grade. Okay. What makes frozen section very scary? Because of the limitations. Sampling of the tissue. Remember, the word frozen section is actually as a biopsy. So when there is a biopsy, what I expect to receive is a small tissue. It's not a big ovarian tumor. Okay, because I don't know where to sample. Okay, that's why we expect to receive a very small tissue from you all. Okay, poor selection of appropriate tissue after grossings. Again, if a big specimen is very difficult, we don't know where to gross. Okay, excessive tumor degeneration or necrosis. Again, it's very difficult to see under the microscope. If there is a tumor in between the necrosis. Okay, if the tumor, the differentiation of malignancy based on vascular invasion or capsule invasion, frozen section is not the way. We cannot help you. It's very difficult. Yeah. Okay. Difficulties that may encounter in frozen section during the frozen section is certain tumors may mimic the normal tissue of cells. Especially in frozen section, it's very, very difficult because there's a lot of artifact. Okay, heterogeneity of tumor. This is the current concept that we accept it as people accepting COVID. Before this, people don't believe, not many people believe about COVID, but since the death tolls arise every day, people start seeing that is true. Yeah, a tumor actually, basically, I think you've learned about this just now, lecture on colorectal carcinoma. Colorectal carcinoma basically is a heterogeneous process. It's multi-step process, and within the tumor, one part of the tumor is not a representative the whole process what happened in the whole tumor. So it depends on where you sample. It might not a best representative of the tumor, so it's a bit difficult, especially when you in the frozen section. We just examine a small piece of tissue. Okay, mixed tumor or biphasic tumor is very difficult. It's very difficult. Okay, so these are some of the difficulties that we found. Since we use water for as a medium, okay, this is the water crystal. By right, this shouldn't be a hole. This is a skin. Okay, so this is all the artifact that we have to realize as a pathologist. So that's why I say frozen section is one of the scary things to have. Once when you request for frozen section. Again, compression artifact. By right, there shouldn't be a space between the cells or the group of cells and the mesenchymal. But this give very very difficult to interpret. Okay, the nuclear-ized crystal. It looks like papillary thyroid carcinoma, intranuclear inclusion, but actually this is ice crystal. Okay. So here, the difference between the frozen section and the H&E, routine H&E, whereby you use paraffin to harden the tissue. You can see very nice. The staining is very the staining is more, much better compared to the frozen. Again, here, this is much nicer. The stain is much better quality compared to the frozen section, but this is good enough actually. This is some of the difficulties ice artifact, ice crystal, okay, fragmentation. This is the folding of the tissue. This is usually we encounter the breaking up of the tissue in frozen section, which makes the interpretation is already difficult. The presence of all these artifacts make things even more difficult. Okay, one of the things that you need to know is what is the contraindication. Actually, there is no absolute contraindication for frozen section, but try to avoid any infective lesion. Because why? Because we are processing a fresh tissue. And let's say that is a TB, in a TB infection, you take the tissue, you send to us. You know, the lab people are exposed to the fume. Yeah, that's why I will always reject if one of your if your differential diagnosis include infection. I would never do. For me, I would just advise you to put it in formalin so that we can analyze it using the routine investigation. Yeah. So in a very short period of time, I hope I able to share or shed some light to you all. Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Associate Prof. Dr. Muhammad Shazihan and Muhammad Saleh.
Yeah.
Any question from the floor?
Yeah, it's already 5:30. I think you all must be very tired the whole day, and then to listen to pathology in the afternoon. My God. Well, I try. I think next time I get, if I were to invite it again, I'll try to get a earlier session.
True. Yeah. Any
So
question?
I try to make things as simple as possible, but yeah, you can have read, you know.
Yeah, but actually it's quite interesting. There is there is some pictures. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So
I
you're
know.
actually quite refreshed about it.
I think I always try to include a bit more picture, and also I'll always stress up when I mention the word exam. Usually that's when the candidates will be awake for a while before they go to sleep again. So intermittently, I will put the word exams along the way, so that suddenly everybody wake up. You know, being sometimes in this business, so I know when to catch your attention. I hope it is very helpful. Actually have a look at the four slides in the beginning. I think it will help you a lot if you can understand the thought process. Especially when answering exam question, actually, so that you won't miss things. Actually, when it comes to differential diagnosis, at least you can give some differential diagnosis if you don't actually know what is the exact diagnosis. So basically, it's a checklist, kind of checklist.
Yeah. So can I make it as a hint for the exam? Since you mentioned the first 4 slides is important.
I've already given 4 questions as requested by Mr. Faizal. So if you read the slides, is everything in here.
Oh,
so
okay. Oh, Mr. Faizal is still here, so he overheard our conversation.
Yeah, I hope it's very helpful. Just know the basic concept, because you're not going to be a pathologist. I know you're a clinician. Just understand what we are doing in the lab. The more you understand of our work, I think the better it will be the interaction between the communication between the clinician and the pathologist. I think that communication is the most important thing, especially when it comes to frozen section. And you can always call us in the lab. I think those pathologists in UIE are all they were all my students.
Yeah. So any question from the floor? Yeah, I think it's very
everybody
comprehensive.
very tired. Yeah. No, everybody is too tired. Actually, I don't think they understand everything.
But I think they understand the last hint that the first 4 slide is very important. That's the important.
No, that's what is basically to help you when you read because when you deal with disease, that's how the textbook put their arrange their description. the features, why they say benign, why they say malignant. So if you can understand, if you know the things, at least you can understand better, easier when you read the pathology books now, I suppose.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, already 5:30, almost
Yes,
5:30.
almost. Yeah.
So yeah, so thank you very much to Associate Prof.
No worries.
Dr. Muhammad Shazihab Muhammad Saleh, and as I know you're from Kuantan, right?
I'm from
Oh,
KL.
not so from KL. Oh, okay, that's a good one.
I'm a Johorian.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So thank you so much for
No worries.
Prof. Yeah. So
Yeah,
have
stay
a,
safe, everybody.
yeah. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is a actually, yeah, for all the others participants, we might have a night session with Mr. Azrin, as we mentioned yesterday. So we will update you guys through the WhatsApp group.
Sorry, just a thing, because Prof. Salihan is your external for general surgical. So I think digest what I mean, like you said, you're not going to be a pathologist, but know the basic concepts, for example, the which staining is for which, frozen section, limitations. I think those are, don't ask those sections suddenly on the main cell. Okay, thank you so much. I think tonight when you have your thing, is it each one or you have to come here?
Usually night one.
Yeah, there's no point if you have to come.
Yeah.
Okay, so tomorrow you have a session? Yes. Yeah, you might see a
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, but but this one, I would suggest to Mr. Yahya to include in your exam.
To include the exam.
Actually in the sequence. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you guys. See you guys tonight.
I think
Bye.
Huh?
principal and methodology, right?
We will update in the WhatsApp group. Yeah. Any question? Okay, bye.
Yes.
Bye.